Someone on Threads asked the question, what's the least amount of money you've spent on a guitar and has become a staple in your arsenal? I can answer that. I've been pretty damn lucky with my guitar buys over the years, and I mean like really, really lucky. Not as lucky as some of you guys, but I'm probably up there in luck if it could be measured. I don't know. I know that I have acquired some really, really cool gear over the years that I love. And when someone asked this question on Threads, I was like, I do have an example. Oh, I've got another example. I've got another example still. And so my goal is to be able to show you that affordable gear, even though it's used, can be had if you are just willing to look. Now, I'm not trying to boast or gloat or anything like that. If I wanted to do that, I would have done it, in multiple videos prior, but this is to hopefully inspire some of you guys who may not have the means to buy something premium. That something premium might actually be out there waiting for you for something you can afford. I'm not one to haggle or argue, and I'm sure you wouldn't be either. Don't try and judge me for 1 second. I know that some of you will say, well, you should pay what it's worth. Come on, you wouldn't do it either. Now, what I will not do is offer less than their asking price. I will gladly pay their asking price. That's an important thing. So I will always pay their asking price. I'd be stupid not to. I will miss an opportunity if I offered anything less. So I will go and buy the gear, no questions asked, look it over. It's pretty awesome that way. Now, if you're wondering if any of this stuff is stolen, I mean, yeah, I've come across some really sketchy buys before where I've had to walk away. There's been some other instances where I've gone to people's homes and it might be like a middle-aged woman living there. She might be like a housewife or a mother. I'm not really sure. I don't ask too many questions, but she just wants to get rid of stuff for next to nothing. And, it could have been someone who was a victim of being cheated on. I don't know. It happens. So I'm there eagerly able to pick something up for cheap. But there is good gear out there if you just are smart enough and you watch and you go pick things up immediately. Don't delay. There are a lot of really great things out there if you just look. For this list, I'm going to give you my top 5, arguably, cheap guitars that I underpaid for. I went way below fair market value. This list will not include anything that was sent to me by a sponsor, things like that. I mean, I want this to be fair. This is stuff that I paid asking price for, or someone offered me in a trade and I came out way ahead. There might be some examples like that as well. So for this list, that's the rules. This is stuff that I paid cash for just as you could, and I want this to be relatable. That's important. So let's get started with number 5. I bought a 2006 Fender Standard Fat Stratocaster for $50. Yes, $50. What's a Fat Stratocaster, you wonder? That is a humbucker in the bridge and then 2 single coils. So it's your standard Stratocaster. It looks like a Stratocaster. It was a black body with a white pickguard and white plastics, and it was really, really cool. I saw it when I was, God, where was I at the time? I remember being out on an errand, and I just happened to look up OfferUp, and this thing appeared. It was $50, and I was like, no way. So I messaged the guy right away. He responded and gave me his address, and it was an apartment complex in a nice part of town, or a nicer part of town. So I thought, let's go check it out. Now, I bought this guitar in October of 2019. If I were to factor in inflation for the last 5 years, it would be $61.11. Still a great deal. I want to say, like, after I bought it, I checked it out, and I got it home. I think I spent about like $75 total, including the guitar, and just maintenance and reconditioning, things like that. And that equates to about $91.67 today. And I got it home, and there was really nothing wrong with the guitar. It was in great shape, almost perfect shape. It still had the 60th anniversary emblem on the back of the headstock. Everything checked out. It was perfect. I took everything apart. I mean, I cleaned inside and out of that guitar. And I turned around and quickly traded it and picked up a Epiphone Les Paul. That was probably not my wisest trade because the seller of that one misadvertised the pickups that were in that Epiphone. But I'm not that salty about it. I paid $50, so, which in turn turned into an Epiphone Les Paul. So I don't know. But that was that guitar. It was $50, and I traded it about a week later. I actually wanted to keep it, but that trade showed up, and I had to do it. Number 4 is a 1994 Fender Stratocaster Squire series. It's no wonder that there's going to be some Fenders on this list. They are a very, very popular guitar. They're all over the place. You can find them underneath houses and in attics and in the bushes. I mean, they're everywhere you can find them, right? But this one was interesting to me because this one appeared on OfferUp. And by the way, I did feature this guitar once on a previous video, which I'll link up there. But this guitar did appear on OfferUp and it was listed for $20. I think it was like a 45, 50-minute drive out to this house. And I woke up and I saw it and I immediately offered and I got no response. Then maybe like 20 minutes later, I got a response from this person and they said, someone offered me 20. If you can beat that price, I will sell it to you. And I'm like, 30? She agreed. So I hit the road and I was really skeptical. I'm like, I'm not going to make it. I mean, she's playing this game where they are pitting buyers against each other. I hate that game, but also it was $20. So it's kind of that risk you take. It's just annoying when it doesn't go in your favor. So I drove out there, let her know I'm on my way. I'm highly communicative when I'm on my way to meet somebody to make a purchase. So I drive all the way out there and I'm going like towards Thousand Oaks in Los Angeles, letting her know the whole way I'm over there. I'm like breaking the law with my phone in my hand and like saying, I'm like 10 minutes out, 5 minutes out. So I finally show up and it's this big, beautiful house out there in this beautiful neighborhood. And there was a bunch of tools out there, no cars out front, just boxes of tools by the front door. It looked like it was going through like a renovation of sorts. And I rang the doorbell and nothing happened. And I waited. I rang the doorbell again. No one's coming. I don't even hear any noises inside this house. And it was really, really quiet out there. So I kind of thought I would hear like footsteps in the house or something. Not that I was pressing my ear up to the door or anything like that. It was just that quiet out there. And I heard nothing. And I'm sitting there thinking like, she knew I was coming. I told her I was coming. She said I could buy it. I've got the cash in hand. And again, this is like the entitled part of me. I'm actually more annoyed at this point because I drove all that way just to feel like I was about to get stood up. But she finally shows up like 15 minutes later. And I'm like standing in the area for a while because I didn't know what else to do. It was like 40, 45 minutes out. So I didn't want to just turn around and drive back. So yeah, I waited. She finally showed up and she apologized for not hearing me knock. And I gave her the $30 and she gave me this guitar in a black thin gig bag. And I opened it up and sure enough, it said Fender Squire series on there. So I was excited. I left and I drove home giggly. Now this is back in April of 2021. So the inflated price on that would be about like $35.33. That's pretty damn awesome, right? I got it on the bench and everything checked out. It still had the cheap economy tuners on there. It still had the cheap bridge. It had the original pick guard with the wiring assembly, but it was in pretty great shape, all things considered. I had a rosewood board on a maple shaft. I was really, really excited to have such a great guitar like this for $30. So I immediately decided to start investing. So I bought a new bridge, I bought new pickups, I bought a new pick guard, I bought new tuning machines. I bought a lot of stuff for this thing to just make it a player. I mean, yeah, it could be argued that it's a collector, and maybe down the road one day it might be worth a lot more money in all original condition, but I wanted to play this thing. So I replaced it with tone hatch pickups. I put the spoonfuls in there, which is what that video was that I showed you. Previously, I'll link to it again. If you were to include the guitar itself, I paid $281.83 for the guitar, which in today's money, which again, I bought this in April 2021, so that would have been about $331.94 if you factor in inflation. And the reason why I'm showing inflation, by the way, is because we've gone through quite the aggressive inflation cycle, so I feel like it's kind of important to point that out. So forgive me on that one. But I do miss that guitar, and the reason why I sold it is because I ended up getting an American Standard Stratocaster in the same exact color and the same exact fingerboard. It was a rosewood board on a maple shaft, and I'm like, why do I have two Olympic white Fender Stratocasters? I don't know why, but I loved the Squire series so much. It was really, really tough to come to terms to get rid of it. So I listed it on OfferUp, and I had a trade offer, which I took, and that trade offer turned into something even better for me, where I got a Warmoth Esquire. So it was a Warmoth that had, I can't remember what the pickup was in there. I think it was a Seymour Duncan Hot Rails that wasn't working right, but it was a Alpine white Telecaster body. But where the real money was is I got a Brazilian rosewood neck from Warmoth. The shaft was Brazilian rosewood. It was beautiful. I love it. It's a wizard profile, so it's nice and thin, easy to navigate, and it's got a Wenge fingerboard with stainless steel frets, and it was in perfect shape. I mean, I've seen them sell on eBay for anywhere between like $1,000 to $1,500, and prices are probably just going to go up from there. So I came out way ahead. I'll show that guitar down the road because I still have it. I still love that guitar. I've changed it a ton. I've moved parts around, but it's back there. So I'll talk about it on another video. And if you want to make sure you catch videos like that in the future, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell notification to be notified when I do upload new videos, because of course you would miss out on that really cool follow-up video. Number 3, this is a guitar I still own. I love this guitar. I'm trying not to love it, but I can't help it. It's amazing. It's a great guitar. And it is a 2000 Squire Stagemaster 2nd generation. So what this is this is the HH version of the Stagemaster. If you're familiar with the Stagemaster, these were a budget-friendly, but kind of like a hot-rodded Super Strat, designed to appeal to a younger crowd. So these sold for very, very affordable prices back in the late 90s, early 2000s and what have you. And they've since been discontinued. And these days they're starting to fetch some good money. But when I traded for this guitar, it was kind of a fun story. So there was a reseller in the Los Angeles area, and he was having a hard time selling it, and it had all the original parts on it. So if you're familiar with this guitar, this is metallic purple, I think is what they call it. It usually comes with all black hardware. To me, it felt really, really dated. And I know it sounds really weird, but then again, I guess 2000 was, 24 years ago? So not that weird, like a quarter of a century ago. It's kind of sad for me. But I wanted this to be something a little more modern. Back to the amount I paid for it. I can't remember if it was OfferUp or Nextdoor. Nextdoor has a for sale and free section, but someone was, in the same day for that matter, I got 2 amplifiers for free, but someone listed a PV Classic Chorus 2x12 for free. They just wanted to get rid of it. So I drove and picked it up, and it worked. There was nothing wrong with it whatsoever. I mean, I cleaned out the pots. I made sure it had a clean bill of health. Everything about it, I cleaned it, and I think I had it listed for, I don't know, whatever the fair market value was at the time. I tried to list below that to move product faster. And another flipper in the area offered me this in a straight across trade. I'm like, okay, I'd rather have a guitar than the PV Classic Chorus, because that thing is huge and I don't play it. He came to my house and we traded it, and I got this guy here. So I effectively paid, if you were to factor in inflation, I don't know, like $0. And I love this guitar. I love it. I try not to love it, but let me go over what I've done to it, because it's no longer the guitar that it once was. So I'll talk about this in a future video as well. So again, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell notification. But in a nutshell, I put a Seymour Duncan JB Trembucker in the bridge, and obviously white. I put a P-rails in the neck. I have got a momentary kill switch right here. I've got a 5-way blade. So basically what I've got is a series JB, and then I've got a south coil on JB only. Then I've got full series on both pickups. Then I've got the P90 only in position 4. And all the way up the top, I get the full series humbucker P-rail. And in addition to that as well, I've got a push-pull on the volume, and this is a blower switch. So if you're familiar with a blower switch, it's amazing. I love it. If you're not familiar with a blower switch, that just basically routes your complete guitar signal past all the electronics straight to the output jack. So it just gives you a little something extra, and it really does. It's not a placebo effect. There's a little bit of a push. It's a really, really worthwhile mod. I'll talk about it in another video, of course. And then I replaced all the hardware with chrome. So this is, I know it's not the best Floyd Rose, but maybe down the road I'll put like a Godot in or whatever. But this is a Floyd Rose special that I picked up locally in the area. Some guy was selling it for $10, and it's mint, so I bought it, and here it is. I also modified the arm, so it's a push-pull. It just drops right in, real easy. And then I changed out the tuning keys. I mean, I didn't want to put anything special on there. I could have put like some really, really nice hip shots or something like that, but I decided not to do that because it's behind a locking nut. I mean, come on. All I really wanted to do was drop some tuners in. That would be a simple drop-in. I wouldn't have to drill anything. I wanted it to be simple. So this guitar is filled with chips and bruises and what have you. I mean, there's a chip up here. I did feature this guitar in a previous video where I think I put in this arm. Yeah, it's got some bangs and bruises, but God, I love it. It's such a great guitar. It's so much fun to play, very easy to play. It's a great shredder guitar. And for some reason, I always find that I want to play like Nuno's licks on here, and I'm no Nuno, don't get me wrong, but and you've seen my video in the past, I presume, where I've returned one of Nuno's guitars back to him. So I've always kind of like had that attachment, I guess, where I want to be able to play like limited things. I'm not a great guitar player to even hold a candle to Nuno's ability, but still fun. We can all aspire, right? And number 2, now this is a little tricky to cover because it's technically two guitars. It is. I mean, it's absolutely two guitars, but I got them at the same time for the same deal. So I kind of feel like I have to lump them up together in the same thing and talk about them both. So let's go on this one. The first of them, so let's just say it's number 2.1, was a 1965 Fender Mustang. Now, you would have seen me talk about that one in a previous video where I got it for free, and that's exactly right. I don't want to go too deeply into that one. You can watch that video if you want to catch up on it. I'll put a link up above. I think that guitar was amazing. I loved it. I wanted to keep it. I thought about keeping it, but I'm not much of a Mustang player. I decided to move on from it for something else. I did trade. So I'm going to go into the next guitar because you can watch the video for the Mustang if you want, but I'm going to go into the next guitar, and it was a guitar from a company out in Youngstown, Ohio called Coupe Guitars. And Coupe Guitars used to be, I mean, they're still around. They're still producing bodies and what have you. I don't know if they're really making guitars anymore, but they were a boutique guitar builder. Like, everything was hand built. I mean, you've heard of Nash, you've heard of James Tyler, stuff like that. There's Danicaster. There's these smaller brands out there cranking out beautiful guitars. They cost a bit of money to get them, and they don't produce them really, really quickly. Companies like Coupe out there were competing as well, trying to get into this boutique market. And I don't know really what happened with it, but I think he pulled back from building guitars for a little while. And now he's back building bodies and what have you, so you can pick those up. I think he's got them on Reverb. But as to how I acquired these guitars, so I don't want to go into this long backstory. I basically befriended the landlords for friends of mine who were having some issues, some personal issues. And so the apartment was left kind of abandoned for a long time, and I went over there to help them out to clean it, and then it turns out there was a rat infestation, to say the least. To be friends with our friends, we offered to go help clean it and get it right and all that good stuff. And in the process, we became friends with their landlords, and their landlords, this is the only property they own. They bought it for the wife's mother, who had passed away in this place. So they were pretty upset that their apartment, that this condo that they rented out was in the condition it was in. I mean, again, there was rats in there. Rats, you would open up a kitchen cupboard, and I'm not kidding you, there was a rat that jumped out at you. Like, really, really frightening stuff. Just rat turds everywhere. So we cleaned it up a lot. I spent a lot of time in there. My wife spent a lot of time in there. The landlord spent a lot of time in there helping our friends out, getting it as clean as possible before it could be disinfected. And plus, all their stuff was in there too. You couldn't just go in there and just burn everything. I mean, this is their stuff. So, but neither of them were home. That's another story for another time if I ever decide to tell it. But that was a crazy ordeal. So what ended up happening is I became really, really close to the landlords. They're an elderly couple. They're very sweet. I loved them to pieces. A husband in that couple was a former, like, boots on the ground Vietnam vet. And like, you want to think about Nam stories. Like, you've seen them in TV. I was getting some Nam stories, like some gruesome stuff, just casually talking as we're walking through the apartment. Later on, I was called by the wife, and she's like, hey, we have a buddy of ours who's around the corner. He's an interesting dude. He's kind of out there, but he's got this big house to himself, and he's interested in selling some old guitars if you're interested. I'm like, well, I don't have a lot to spend on vintage guitars. She's like, well, he mostly probably just wants you to take a look at it and assess its value. So I agreed. I set up a date and a time, and I actually meet with the husband of this couple, and we drive over together. As described, this house is weird. It was really, really, really weird. He's kind of like a former hot rodder. He works on cars and motorcycles and stuff like that. He used to play music. The house is in disarray, but it was a big house. But again, in disarray, there was like crawl space tunnels, like trenches, I should say, not crawl spaces, but trenches that were like around the property. It was a strange place. But he had these guitars, and after I got like this tour and I heard all this back and forth banter between the husband of this couple and this other dude, I was shown the guitars. And the first one was this 1966 Fender Mustang, or 65 Fender Mustang, which I've told you about, and that was in bad shape. And then I saw this other guitar, and it was a Strat, and it looked relict, and I was like, well, what is that one? He's like, oh, it's another one that I've got, I don't know what to do with. So you want to take that one too? And I'm like, I guess. So I took that guitar and I was just going to like give it a look over. And then there was another guitar. It was like an Epiphone VW, the really, really, really tiny flying Vs. And there was a Squire 2 Stratocaster Contemporary. So it was an HSS with no pick guard. The Squire was in terrible shape. The Fender Mustang was in terrible shape. The coupe, which was that Strat, I couldn't tell because it was relict. So I kind of assumed it was in good shape as long as nothing was warped. But yeah, I took home 4 guitars. And then I started putting phone calls to the wife of this couple, and I was letting them know, I'm like, I'm not feeling that comfortable with holding onto these guitars. Like, how much does he want for them? Like, I don't like holding onto these. It's just like, you know what? You know what he told us? He wants you to keep them. And I'm like, no way. Yeah, he just wants them to be in a better home. I was floored. What a cool gesture. I looked a little bit further, and I reached out to him, and he confirmed that he just wants me to have them. I'd never met this person in my life. What a cool dude. While I was there, though, he did show me that he had an Ovation that was that he loved, that was smashed by his then girlfriend. She's not in the picture anymore, but she like full on like Pete Townsend the thing. And he still had it. It was in its case, but he was asking me how much it would be to repair it, and it was just, you can't. I mean, I'm sure you probably could repair it, but it's not worth the time and the resources to do it unless it's sentimental, which, you know, he just always wanted one. There was nothing sentimental about that particular Ovation, but he was pretty upset about it. So I had a Glenn Campbell Ovation that I gave him in return. So I guess there would be some investment through that. But as far as like a 1965 or 66 Mustang, I can't remember the year anymore. But as far as getting that and this coupe guitar and the VW and the Squire 2, okay. Like if I fan out the price of that Glenn Campbell Ovation across like those 4 instruments, still came out way ahead. But yeah, that was a crazy experience too. And so what ended up happening with the Mustang and the coupe, because I don't have them anymore, and someone called me out on a previous video for being disingenuous about it, and at the time I owned it and I loved it. When I made the video, it was I wasn't being disingenuous, but I did trade it in at a local music shop towards a Les Paul. I think I spent total for the guitar, like I paid $0 for the Fender Mustang, but I pumped in about $520.36 after parts and what have you, which translates to be about $587.06 after inflation. And then the coupe, I paid $39.42 for some bridge saddles because it was missing a gold saddle, and it was an all-parts bridge on there, so I just got some all-parts saddles and then threw it on, and that, with inflation, is about $44.47. I took these 2 guitars. Obviously, I got them working. They play great. I loved that coupe guitar, but it had this really, really chunky neck, and I wasn't clicking with it like I wanted to. I loved the sound of it. It had Fralin pickups. It had the hot vintage in there. God, those things sounded amazing. But I just wasn't gelling with it. And plus I have enough Strats. I have so many Strats. So I decided to, let's trade it. So I traded the coupe and I traded a Fender Mustang towards this Gibson Les Paul traditional. I didn't own a Les Paul with a flame top. I feel like I should have one. So I traded towards it. And granted, the music shop came out ahead, but I was okay because I think the total amount invested, I traded towards that Les Paul. It was still a great deal. I do miss those guitars. The coupe was phenomenal. I think Imperial Guitar still has it on their Reverb site, so if you want to go check it out for yourself, go over to Reverb. I'll try and leave a link for that one down below if you're interested in picking that up. They have it there. I think the Fender Mustang has, even though I put so much work into it to try and make it a good player guitar, it has been since parted out. I found the body on I think it was like New Hampshire or something like that, and I could totally tell it was the same body based on like some of the things that were done to it prior to my ownership of it. I saw the same chips, the same the weird contours from a Rogue sander. I found it online, and it's the body by itself, so it was scrapped for parts, and that breaks my heart a little bit. So it is what it is. But when I did sell it, I did include the original neck, because if you saw the previous video, you'll know I replaced the neck. So I did replace the neck on that one, and I included the original neck with the trade. And last but not least, number 1, and this is a guitar that I responded with on Threads as to the guitar that I picked up that has become a part of my staple. You may not have seen me play it too much on these videos. I haven't really talked about it much. I haven't shown it off, but I play it a lot. It's a great guitar. I love it to pieces, and that is this 2015 American Special Telecaster. This guitar I found on the former website Let Go, which has since been acquired by OfferUp and integrated into OfferUp. But I don't have any reference points for it anymore. I can't take any screenshots of that. So you'll have to take my word for it. But I remember seeing this guitar. It had blurry photos. It was even hard to see Fender. But I really tried hard to see everything. And on the back of the headstock, there's the serial number, right? I wanted to see what it was. And this listing had, like I said, a bunch of blurry photos in low light conditions. It included a hard case, but the screenshot that they took of what this guitar was a Fender standard Telecaster, which is made in Mexico. It was listed for, I think it was originally listed for like $400, and it had the price dropped over and over and over again. And Let Go used to have this really, really funny discount system, which would never round the number down to like the nearest 10. It would like just give a percentage off. It would round it to the nearest dollar. It wouldn't like give you weird cents or anything like that, but it would round it to the nearest dollar. So the price on this one was $151 even. I bought this back in November of 2019, so it's been almost 5 years. If I were to factor in inflation from then, it would be about $184.66. Still a great deal. So this guitar I've owned for about 5 years. What's interesting about this guitar is when I messaged the guy, the listing had been up for a while. So I was sitting there thinking like, there's no way that this guitar is still available. There's no way. Not at this price. This is a setup. Like, I'm going to get ambushed. And apparently, I think that's what everybody else on the planet must have thought too when they saw it, because there's no way that a guitar like a Fender Telecaster would be listed at $151 for that long. Now, granted, there have been an onslaught of like cheap Chinese knockoffs of Fenders. We all know this. We've seen it. A lot of them are bad, but something about this, even through the blurry photos, it just stood out to me as being authentic. Although the pictures did include a screenshot of a Fender standard Telecaster made in Mexico, I was able to somewhat figure out the serial number, and I tried over and over to see what it was, and it turns out that this actually was an American Special Telecaster. It was phenomenal. It was great. So I messaged the guy. He said he still had it, and we arranged to meet up. And the whole time I'm driving over there, I'm like driving through Los Angeles, and I call my best friend, and I'm like, I'm going to get this. I can't believe it's there. I'm meeting this guy at this address. So if I disappear, this is where I was last seen. I'm setting myself up to make sure that if I disappear or if something bad happens to me, that there's a plan of recourse. The things I go through to get gear, right? I don't advise you do any of that, by the way. Like, don't take stupid risks like I take stupid risks. I'm just greedy, right? So I show up, I meet this person at a public place in a parking lot, and he opens up the trunk of his car and pulls out this Gator hardshell case that has a chip in it, and he opens it up, and sure enough, I see this guitar, and I look it over, and I had $151 even. I wasn't even gonna like haggle over that $1. Just don't do stuff like that. Like, don't be that guy, because I don't want him to turn around and walk away. I handed him the $151. I let him know it was all there. He counted it, and I rushed out of there as fast as possible. And the whole time I'm driving home, my best friend's like offering to pay me like $300 for it. So I get it home, and it had a black pickguard on it. I mean, it was as stock could be. Because I got this thing for so cheap at $151, let's mod the thing, right? Over time, like, I've put in this beautiful aluminum paisley pickguard on here. I love this pickguard. It's not plastic. It actually is metal. I have currently in here Fender noiseless, or the N3s, the third generation noiseless pickups, and they're decent. I actually don't hate them. I do think there's better out there, and I'm going to get into that later. But I don't hate this pickup. I've replaced the wiring. I put Goto compensated saddles on here, the Intune saddles, and it's got the original Fender bridge. I put Fender's locking tuning machines on here as well, easy drop in. And I think I put in a Graphtec Tusk XL nut as well. So this guitar has become like this phenomenal player for me, and it's nice and quiet. It sounds good. It plays great. It's absolutely incredible. And I think if I were to really factor in all the money I pumped into this guitar, including the guitar itself, I paid $421.26. And if I were to factor in inflation from November 2019, that would be $515.16. Still a great deal, especially for something that's customized to my liking. And I know it's not all stock anymore, but you know what? This is a player guitar. I'm going to play the out of it. Now there's some bangs and dings on here. There's a couple little chips here and there, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to chip here. I got a little bit of a scratch on the back. It's always been there. Some little hits here and there. I mean, they're around, and that's okay. This is a player guitar, and I love it. It's a great guitar. And yeah, that's the one of my favorite guitar stories that I've bought out there. Now, I also want to point out that I did run the serial number through Los Angeles Police Department to make sure it didn't show up as stolen, and it didn't. So I waited for a while, and I would have happily returned it to the person it might have been stolen from. But I think the only person who really stole it was probably me, because that was like highway robbery for how little I paid for it. So I'm happy. I'm good. And again, like, I know that some of you guys could probably say, like, you should have told the guy what he had and then paid him the fair market value. Again, you wouldn't have done it either. You wouldn't have done it. It's like people in sports, like, oh, the other team cheats, blah, blah, blah. It's like, if your team did it too, your team wouldn't fess up either. No team ever goes to the refs and say, you know what? You missed this call against us. It's the same thing. Like, I'm not going to sit there and haggle, or at least, work against me in this sense and pay more for something than was advertised. I will take the $151 guitar, please, and move on to the next one. So real quick, I want to be able to point out that any of the inflated prices that I quoted are straight from the United States government. We'll put a link down below, and they have what's called a CPI inflation calculator. So you can put in if something was purchased on this date, this is how much it would be on this date. So the latest I could reference was July of 2024. So I was able to put in the original purchase price and the date, and then work from there and come up with the inflated prices. And I feel like it was important to bring those up because, like, inflation has been running rampant, right? I mean, we all know. Everybody, like, if you don't think inflation's happening right now, I don't think you're spending any money. So there's that. Do I regret selling any of these guitars? I mean, of course. I miss guitars all the time. I've had hundreds of guitars go through my system here, whatever you want to call it. So I have... yeah, I definitely missed the Coupe Wish You Were Here guitar. That was a phenomenal guitar. It sounded amazing. Again, I just didn't bond with that neck. And the 1965, 66 Mustang, I wanted to like that one. I did play that one a fair amount, but it wasn't speaking to me either. I thought it sounded great, but for the style of music that I'm accustomed to playing, I just wasn't finding a spot for that Mustang in my arsenal. Now, if it came back my way, of course, I would take it back in because I miss it. But I traded it towards a guitar that I play far more, and I think that's the important thing, is you want to make sure that guitars that are worth playing are in the hands of people willing to play it. So that was me. I needed to get this guitar. And again, that Les Paul I ended up getting, it was one of those scenarios where I walked into a music store not looking to buy a Les Paul that day, and I picked it up and played it as I was waiting, and I bonded with it, and I didn't want to let it go. I didn't want to let it go at all. It was too good. It sounded good. It played great. I was like, this sucks. Like, okay. So that's how that went down. I want to know if you found a guitar for cheap and how much you paid for it, what it was, your address, your social security. I'm just kidding. No. Let me know in the comments what your cheapest guitar was that you paid for cash out of pocket. And I'm just curious. So again, if you do like content like this, make sure you like this video and hit the subscribe button, plus the bell to be notified when I do upload new content. And if you have any questions, let me know down in the comments down below, and also tell me your stories. Until then, I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Take it easy, everybody.